Well, a very warm welcome back, all my vintage dirt bike loving YouTubers, and thanks to you all once more for tuning in to Classic Dirt Bike TV. Now, coming up in my next video, we're going back to the last and final Nostalgia Scramble that was held in 2017, but and this time we're going to take a walk through the Marquee on the Saturday night and have a look at some of those lovely British-made Rickman Scramblers that were on display at the concourse section on the Saturday night. So there's quite a few nice looking bikes here, so I do hope you enjoy taking a look at those. So without any further delay, let's just have a look at our first race machine. Okay, thanks for joining me again, and of course, as in every other Nostalgia Scramble, there was always a theme to the event or a particular make of dirt bike that was featured each year. And in the past we had CZ and CCM bikes, and here in 2017 it was to honour those very talented Rickman brothers who designed and built these frames in the 1960s. And Don Rickman was the guest of honour at this 2017 Nostalgia Scramble, which actually turned out to be the last and final year that this event was held. But our first bike here is a nice looking Triumph Twin, as you'd expect, in a Rickman frame, which looks like it's, I think it's a 500, although the owner wasn't actually listed in the race programme, so I'm unable to supply any details of the rider's name, but a very nice bike all the same. Of course, back in the day you could order a frame kit from the Rickman brothers, which would include the chassis, the tank, the seat, the side panels and the swing arm, which would of course be supplied ready for you to fit your particular engine into. Although if you were flush with the cash, you could just get them to build you a complete bike if you weren't good at throwing the spanners around. But these were superb chassis and sold very well, not just here in the UK, but overseas as well. But once you took delivery of the frame kit and then assembled it, you would then fit your own forks and rear suspension and wheels and all the other smaller parts. But once again, if you did have sufficient conkers, then you could just buy all the remaining parts straight from the Rickman factory. But no matter what motor or colour your particular frame kit came in, when you saw one of these scramblers racing on the track, there was certainly no doubt that you were looking at another Rickman framed motorcycle, because these were so easily identifiable with their fiberglass fuel tanks and that slightly boat tail shaped rear cowling. But these Triumph twin motors were a very popular choice for a lot of racers way back in the day, and of course they sounded absolutely fantastic when these bikes got fired up with the sound through these straight through exhaust headers. Now this next Rickman bike belongs to Charlie Robertson, and this time the chassis has a big single cylinder 4-stroke 500 matchless motor fitted in it. Now Charlie rode this bike to many successes way back in the day, although these days he doesn't get the chance to ride it much due to some health issues, but Charlie still lets young Andrew King give this bike a run out from time to time, and as you'd expect, it's a very quick old bike with that massive torquey 4-stroke motor in the superb Rickman chassis. Now I'm not entirely sure, but I expect that this engine also runs on methanol fuel, as many of these big single cylinder bikes do these days, which makes them very fiery and a bit of a handful. But these Rickman frames with their fiberglass fuel tanks and side panels were still capable of handling anything that would be dished out by that big matchless power plant. Now again, and as you'd expect, there's A very nice throaty brap comes from that big 500 matchless engine when this gets fired into life. But the motor also sits quite low in the frame in this bike, which is, I suppose, is quite good if you want to perform some speedway slides, exiting some of the corners. Now, this engraving on the cam cover had me baffled, and I just couldn't make the connection with this word Yetis. Now, it's obviously something to do with Matisse, but maybe some of my more knowledgeable YouTubers will have a better idea. Now, our next Rickman example is Willie Gordon's BSA bike. Now, I know that Willie has at least 2 of these bikes in his collection, and as you can see, once again, you can buy your particular Rickman frame kit in whichever colour you like, and Willie's chosen this cream motif on his bike. Now, once again, the fiberglass fuel tank's been painted with Willie's national flag, which I think is quite a nice touch, but that's the thing about these Rickman frame kits, that you can personalise your own machine, and although the frame may look identical, you can still personalise your own bike to suit whatever colour or configuration that takes your fancy. Now again, it's much the same rule with these front forks. You could fit whichever suspension system you like, although these Italian-made Serianis appear to be one of the most popular choices around. Now, Willie has one of the later BSA motors in this bike, with it having that slightly squarer barrel, because the earlier BSA engines, of course, had the rounder barrel configuration. Now, this next Rickman example is Greg Radley's 250 Villiers Star Maker Matisse, another lovely looking classic, painted of course in British racing green, which for me personally is certainly one of the nicer colours for an old vintage race bike. Now, Greg's bike's powered by this Villiers Star Maker motor, which was originally designed back in 1963 by Bernard Hooper, who was pretty handy at designing two-stroke motors, and of course John Fathel, who also worked for Villiers. He specialised in gearboxes and transmissions. Now, these Star Maker engines were normally just a 4-speed gearbox for motocross use, although this engine was also hugely successful in road racing back in the day, and those road racing engines were fitted with a 6-speed gearbox. Now, it's said that back in 1966, one of these Star Maker engines that was fitted into a road racer took a 3rd place finish at the 250 TT race on the Isle of Man. Now, the bike, it's said to have lapped the course at an average speed of 90 miles per hour, and was just only beaten by a multi-cylinder Honda bike. But for a smaller manufacturer such as Villiers, this was quite an achievement. Now, I can imagine that with this light Villiers Star Maker 2-stroke engine and that superb Rickman chassis, that this would be still quite a nice bike to ride on a racetrack, and it would be reasonably quick and flickable. But these Star Maker motors had such a multiple of uses back in the day for powering all manner of racing machines, including go-karts, trials bikes, scramblers, and of course road bikes. But later there was even a few of these engines used in light 4-wheel Formula car racing that were of course fitted with the 6-speed road racing gearbox. Now, another nice Triumph engined Rickman, and this time it's Gary Fleckney's 1968 Rickman Matisse 750. Now, of course, naturally would have liked to have got better, wider angles of the bikes on the night, but as all the machines were packed quite tightly together, it wasn't easy to access for decent shots. Although, as you can see, the engineering that goes into making these Rickman frames is just first class. Now once again, Gary's bike's been painted in British racing green with a pair of nice rock shocks on the rear there. But I'm sure you don't need me to tell you what this Triumph twin motor actually sounds like when it starts up, but believe me, there's probably isn't a better sounding twin, especially when they have these straight through exhaust header pipes. Now another lovely looking Rickman example here, and this is Dougie Makes BSA bike, which actually went on to win the top prize for the best looking Rickman Scrambler on the night. But we will be taking a closer look at Dougie's BSA in my next video posting here on my channel, so I hope you'll retune to see that. But it's a lovely looking bike, and certainly not a show bike by any means. I mean, this bike is still regularly raced by Dougie, although he may have been out with the spit and polish to take part in this comp course competition, and here we can see him being presented with his prize by one of the nostalgia organisers, Ian Radley. But look out for a more in-depth look at this very nice bike. Now, of course, another of the bikes that were on display was this lovely machine from Alan Bott, which is his Steve McQueen Triumph Desert Racer replica. Now, these Rickman Matisse Desert Racers are an exact copy of the bikes that were owned and ridden by Steve McQueen, and initially Matisse meant to only build a very limited run of these bikes, with Alan's bike being number 6 off the production line. But when Matisse launched these bikes, a promotional film was also made to publicise the initial build of the first few bikes, and a reenactment of the Great Escape clip that saw Steve McQueen jump over the fence with the Triumph was also set up on fairway number 13 at the Carswells Golf Club in Oxfordshire, where Trials motorcycle stunt rider Steve Colley would then use this very bike to do the jump over that mock-up fence. And as far as I'm aware, that promotional video is still available on YouTube, so if you're interested, then take a look at it and you'll see this bike in action. Now, the motor is a T6 Triumph 650 twin with a 4-speed gearbox and an Amal R930 23 concentric carburetors, but these bikes are very much carbon copies of the original bikes that Steve rode, and every one of them is 100% correct in every detail. But I also have a more comprehensive video on this bike already on my channel, so you may want to take a look at that. But because it was part of the Rickman exhibition at this 2017 Nostalgia event, it was certainly worth another look round the bike. Now, the normal McQueen replicas are all fitted with fiberglass fuel tanks, although on this occasion Alan's had his swapped for this aluminium tank, which of course will be stronger and not so susceptible to damage internally by those modern day fuels. Now, the official designation of Alan's Rickman Matisse is MQN006, but maybe Alan should have held on and waited on the next bike, which of course would have had a much better title at 007. Now, once again, it looks like these Desert Racers are fitted with these QD rear wheel hubs, or Quick Detach, to give them their full title. But these bikes also had Seri Annie forks on the front, and the rear shocks are reproduction copies of the original Girling shocks from back in the day. But for me personally, if I won the lottery, I'd certainly be rushing straight out there to Matisse to order a shed load of these bikes, because they're such an iconic machine, and of course quite a decent investment because of their limited supply. But there's certainly a fantastic combination with the Rickman frame, the Matisse motorcycles, and of course that Triumph twin engine. And when you're talking about the best of British, you have to ask yourself, does it actually get any better? But of course, one of the highlights of Alan's weekend was having his picture taken with none other than Don Rickman, one of the founding brothers of Rickman motorcycles. Now, another set of Rickman Scramblers that were at the 2017 Nostalgia event, but weren't actually in the Marquee tent on the Saturday night, basically because there was just far too many of them. But this very unique collection, of course, belongs to Irishman Cecil Pearson. Now, these are all 1960s Rickman frames with those 1930s John Alfred Prestwich or Jap motors to give them their abbreviation. Now, I've covered this collection in other videos here on my channel, so I won't go into too much detail here, but please take a look if these are the kind of vintage racers that you're into. Now, Cecil had 6 of these bikes on display at the event, but of course he didn't just bring them all the way from Ireland just so as people could take a look at them, or even to try and win a bit of silverware or two at the concourse judging competition, because every one of these bikes were actually raced on the Sunday by Cecil's team of riders. And if you'd like to see them in action, then just check out the racing video clip from this 2017 Nostalgia event. Although I have to say that since these video clips were taken, Cecil's already added at least another 2 more Jap machines to this collection. But don't let the look of these antique motorcycles fool you. They may look like they've come straight out of the 1930s, but these methanol fueled monsters are seriously quick bikes and certainly a match for anything on the track. Although without doubt there's certainly not another collection like it in the UK, and almost certainly even in Europe. And the bikes keep Cecil occupied maintaining them and keeping them running. But these Jap 4-stroke motors were originally designed for speedway racing and to run on methanol fuel, and they also had that very unique total loss oil lubrication system. But Cecil's bikes never fail to draw the crowds when they turn up at these vintage race events. But as I said, there's already a more in-depth video doing the rounds on my video channel, so if you'd like to know more about these bikes, then please just check it out. But this 2017 Nostalgia event was of course the last ever at this Holme Farm venue, and is sadly no more, unfortunately. But it was a fantastic weekend of socialising, racing and looking at old vintage race bikes, and I can't think of a more fitting way to bring this unique event to a close than having this and all the other Rickman Scramblers sitting proudly all in one place. Well, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some of those old British-made Rickman Scramblers from the 2017 Nostalgia Scramble. These bikes, of course, made famous by the legendary Don and Derek Rickman. It always amazes me what different makes and models of engines that you can slot into these old Rickman frames. Okay, anyhow, coming up next on my channel, we're going to take a look at another example of one of these Rickman bikes, and we're going to take a look at Dougie Makes 1968 BSA Rickman. So we're going to have a little walk through Dougie's bike in my next video, so I do hope you'll retune to take a look at that. But until the next time, everybody, please continue to stay safe and well, and we'll speak once more when we all return to Classic Dirt Bike TV.